Gonna make sure that goes live. It should take just a second here. All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have Tanna here, who is one of our Happy Hormones group members, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about her journey with hormones and really how her life transformed once she began really working at the root causes. So, Tanna, do you want to share a little bit about who you are? Obviously, as much as you're comfortable sharing, and then we'll just kind of dive in.
Okay. I'm a mother of 3 boys. I have a 10 and 11-year-old, and then I just had a surprise. He's 2 now. So, so there's a little bit of a spread in there. So I stay at home with my boys, and then, yeah, do you want me to start with where I started from with my hormone journey, or?
Yeah, I would love for you to share.
Okay.
I know,
All right.
you're one of many, many, many in this group that have had the same struggle. And so I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. I've always kind of had, according to my doctor, kind of low progesterone, and we've kind of worked through that. But with my second son, I got postpartum depression, and kind of suffered through that for about 3 years. Definitely was obviously low point. But from there, they just kept saying, my doctors kept saying, your hormones just need to reset. They just need to reset and everything will be okay. And it wasn't happening. I had to take I can't remember, it was several years ago, but a antidepressant while I was going through the depression. I only took one because I still wanted to be able to nurse my son. And I think that really affected me for the long term. But, after a lot of prayer, definitely got healing from that. But my hormones were not the same after that. Right. So definitely struggled with a lot of emotional things. It wasn't to the level of depression, but, the ups and downs, and probably every woman here knows that. But things just continued, and I had a lot of digestive issues ever since I was on that antidepressant. My libido was like non-existent anymore.
Sure.
It felt like. And then just a lot of those things I just felt like were just had gotten worse since that. And just kind of went on this journey of trying to figure out, what do I need to do? My PMS symptoms, basically, to just kind of generalize it, kind of were like all month long, is always. Yeah. And so I felt like I would maybe have like 1 or 2 days relief where I felt like a normal person again. And so went to some doctors, and they, said my progesterone was low, said I had hyperthyroidism. I think it was hyperthyroidism, just different things like that. Right. When we go on these different things, and I just felt like the issue wasn't being addressed. And they eventually, long story short, just kind of went on a few things, kind of went off of it because I just felt like they weren't doing any good. They kept wanting to put me back on an antidepressant because they thought that would just solve the problem. And I said, I don't ever want to do that again unless I absolutely have to. So just kind of suffered through it and just kind of figured out how to live with it, but also felt like this isn't how it should be. So, and I know, there's always going to be problems, and our bodies are always going to have some issues, but that just didn't seem right. So then my third son, our little surprise, came along, and things actually got a little bit better after I had him. But then I started having pain throughout my body, lots of pain in my joints and just inflammation. It felt like inflammation, but they said there was no inflammation. And so they sent me to a rheumatologist, all this kind of stuff. And so then along with that came with extreme fatigue, and just kind where it was like, if I can just make it to nap time, or if I'll there have been days where I'll just be like, do you want to watch this so I can just lay down and rest while he's watching that? And so it was just really hard. My other older 2 boys are really active, and I just kept telling my husband something has to change. So I went back to the doctor, and they're like, well, the things you can do is like some sort of anti-seizure medicine or birth control or an antidepressant. And I was like, I don't want to do any of those. I had never gone on birth control, and I didn't want to start now.
Right.
So even though we were surprised by that third one, we're still like, no, we don't want to do that. So and it our family planning had worked up to that point so far anyway. So
Right.
I just was like, something isn't right. But I know it has to do hormonally, the pain that I'm going through there, and so I talked to my sister-in-law who actually had gone through your program, and she had different issues than I did, but the way she talked about it, I was like, I kept telling my husband, I'm like, I just want to figure out, like, how do you do this naturally, like by eating and all this kind of stuff, and I just don't have the knowledge to do that. And she told me about it. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is exactly what I've been looking for. So then we reached out to you. So here we are.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
you hit on so many different pain points that so many women have. And, I prefer for other people to share their story just because I feel like I share my story all the time. But I went through so much of the same thing where it was just like, well, here are your options. There was a lot of resistance to doing any sort of lab testing, and the lab testing that they did do, I kept going in with like this hope or expectation, like maybe now they'll finally see what, like maybe now they'll finally see what, like there will be some explanation for how I'm feeling, instead of just this like, well, you've had kids and now you're broken, which is kind of what it feels like. And I was young, I was only 26, and so having my first baby and then having all of these health issues, I was just like, I don't think this is how I'm supposed to feel. Like, I'm young, like yeah, of course there's fatigue because I'm getting up, 5 times a night. But once they're sleeping, and there's kind of this happens a lot. I hear this a lot with women where there's almost this expectation like, oh, my hormones are just gonna like snap back together, and they don't without the right information. And it's such a disservice that's happening in the medical community where they're not educating on that, and they're not explaining to people like, hey, your cells, your hormones actually need the right cellular information through food and sleep and different, dietary and lifestyle practices to actually feel better. And so I love that you listen to your gut, and we talk about that a lot. That gut feeling of like, okay, my doctor's telling me this, and that there is nothing wrong with me, or that the problem is X, Y, and Z, but I've tried all of those solutions and none of them work, so then there has to be something else that we're not looking at. I love that you paid attention to that, because that's something I feel like, for lack of a better word, has kind of been stripped from us in our healthcare experience as women in general, at least what I'm still hearing, where there's very few practitioners that will actually say, you know what, let's look into this. Let's figure out what the problem is. Let's look at the contributing factors that are making you feel this way and how we can actually get you feeling better. So thank you for sharing that, because I know I'm one of, thousands and thousands, but there are hundreds more in this group that I'm sure can relate to that as well. So and it sounds like within that, there had already been a lot of dialogue between you and your spouse about how that was impacting you, how that was affecting your day with your children. And he was, on board with you making some changes. So what changed for you in the course of, obviously us working together, but what changed for you? Because I know there were some surprising improvements that you were like, oh, like I actually feel good. So I would love for you to share like what kind of began to change for you as you began addressing like the real problems instead of just the surface.
Yeah. A few of the things that really stuck out to me, like I had mentioned, ever since I was on the antidepressant, I had some digestive issues.
Right.
And that was something, I guess I wanted to get better, but I didn't really expect it so much on the hormone
Right.
side of it, because I didn't, again, like I said, I didn't have the knowledge that the digestion and all that goes in
Right.
together. And so I feel like it's so nice to not have a stomach ache all the time. And so
Right.
that was a nice a nice bonus for me, I guess. And then for me, the biggest thing that I have noticed is the fatigue. I mean, there it is. I just feel like a normal, like a person again. Like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still tired, I just last night, my son woke up a few times in the night because he was
Sure.
stuck up, and you still have that tiredness, but it is
Right.
and I'm sure a lot of the women understand, it's like there's a difference between being tired and just being
Yes.
just physically exhausted, like your body's just heavy. And so that is just to, I know, like right now is his nap time and I just feel good. And so
That's amazing.
that's a huge thing for me. And I mean, it's, I always tell my husband, I'm like, I just feel good. I mean, I'm really tired at nighttime, but that's supposed to be the way it is. So
Right.
um that's a
Normal,
big
yeah,
one.
there's definitely a difference between normal tired and like exhaustion.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't realize that we were truly feeling like exhaustion, like burnout exhaustion, until we start feeling better and we're like, oh, this is normal tired.
Yeah.
What I was
Yeah.
feeling was not normal tired.
Yeah.
So I love that you shared that. And so how is that kind of translated to your life? So in your day to day, because I know, in our initial conversation, we had talked about, like, how is this really impacting your day and what do you really want? Because that's what helps us to motivate us to do something different, is really identifying what we want in our life, in our everyday life. What is this? I wanted to be able to, laugh with my daughter. I wanted to be able to go outside and not have anxiety attacks. Like I wanted to have the energy to keep up with now a very mobile person who's running around my house. So I didn't know if it was possible. So I would love for you to share, if you're able to, how that's kind of, having more energy, how that has translated to your day-to-day life with your family.
Yeah. For a big thing for me was, well, I was older having my third son. And so first I thought that's just what it is. I mean, I was
Right.
40 when I had him. So I just thought this is how it is when you're 40 and
Yeah.
have a kid. But it just didn't seem right. But what was different is like, I remember when I had my first two, I could skid on the ground and play with them. I could do all those things. And with this little guy, I'm just like, I just can't. I'm just so
Mhm.
tired. And so now I can play with him and I want to play with him.
Yeah.
And I feel like because of that, like we have a great bond, but I feel like it's even better. And
Right.
our relationship's even better. And even with my older boys, like I'm more patient with them. And I think that's a big thing that I've noticed. I mean,
Yeah.
I still, when things get crazy, I still snap at them and stuff like that, but I have control over
Yeah.
things. And I can be in the moment more, I think, is the big
Wow.
thing for me, and enjoy my family. Where and I've said this to my husband before. I'm like, this is what I always imagined being a mom was going to be like, and so
Mhm.
that joy and that excitement, and enjoying your kids even when they frustrate you.
Totally.
I didn't have that with my second son until much later. And
Yeah.
now with all three of them, I can not only, like before I was enjoying it, but I was so tired I couldn't like be a part of it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Totally.
so yeah, so I think that's the big daily change for me, is that like I'm a part of my family again, and I
Right.
can enjoy them and I can participate. And it's a really busy season right now for us, and I can do it. So
Yeah,
that's huge for
totally.
me.
That's
So
amazing. And I think you touched on a lot of things that actually made me feel a little bit emotional, because I'm like, man, this is the stuff money can't buy, right? It's
yeah.
the connection with our children, the connection with our spouses, feeling like yourself again, and being able to really fulfill your calling, which is whatever it is you're called to do in any season. We have to have the emotional and the physical and the spiritual reserve to do that. And so that is phenomenal. And I love that you touched on how you were just saying, like, I get to have that connection with my kids and know that, it's almost like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of like going in a rabbit trail here for a second, but I will get back to the point I was thinking of. It's kind of like, um, when you've experienced depression as a mom, postpartum depression specifically, but you can have it at any point, in your life, antenatal depression, etc., it does steal something from you. And that's not something that at least in my experience, is openly really talked about. It's hard for women to talk about. It's hard to say, I feel like I lost something, because I was so disconnected from myself and from my family because of that depression. It's almost like this fog or like a wall, um, that that has to be restored in some way, right? And so when we start to get, and whether or not that impacted our bonding, like our actual being able to attach to our children, for the most part, it doesn't typically affect them so much as it affects us. Like they
Yeah.
don't necessarily have negative impacts from it because we're still doing the day-to-day tasks, even if we're feeling like garbage inside, right? But we still have to get that back, right? We're in the sense of like, I missed those 2 years that I didn't feel great. And so now getting to have that connection back and saying like, look, I get to take my kids for walks instead of, crashing on the couch and throwing them in front of the iPad. I mean, those days do happen every once in a while, but they're not the everyday anymore. And so I love that you touched on that, because really, it's not just about restoring your hormones, right? It's so much more than that. And I think you beautifully shared, the impact that has had on you and your family. And even in the crazy busy season of, of Christmas, getting to keep your head above water and like, yeah, the school just emailed saying, well, I got to make 24 cookies. Okay, I'm making 24 cookies, and it doesn't like lead you to tears or panic or, wanting to crawl into a ball and throw something at someone. Not that any of you have ever experienced that, but
Oh
I
gosh.
just, so I'm really proud of you, and you're not even done yet. So getting
Yeah.
all of those wins, and you're not even finished with the process, is phenomenal. So I would love to hear what you would say to maybe some other women who are here that are needing some encouragement or hope, or maybe they're in the exact same place that you were, 8 or 9 weeks ago. What would you say to those women?
I think one thing, one encouragement is that, I don't know if this is going to sound like an encouragement or not, but when I first started, I was like, okay, this is going to start working thing. We're going to have changes right away. And it wasn't like that. And I got very discouraged. And I do appreciate that, like every week you guys talk about the wins and stuff like that. And even though there'd be weeks where I'm like, well, I didn't have any wins and I don't want to say anything, but if I really sat down and thought about it and look back, I'm like, okay, actually things are getting better.
Right.
Even though I think when, at least for me, when you get into this, I got into this rut where it was just like, it felt like it was never going to change, even though I was like, something has to change. You just kind of get like this, okay, this is how my life is and this is how I have to live to survive. And then as you keep going into this program and it was kind of nice that we had like all these like tasks each week, because I could focus on that instead of what's not good for me. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so I appreciated that I could focus on, I need to get my greens in every day. Am I doing that every day? And then I can take a step back and be like, oh, I actually feel better. My stomach doesn't hurt every day,
Mm-hmm.
And I think looking at those little things
Right.
each time, now I can look back and be like, oh, it's big now, and
Yeah.
as the process goes, those little things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And like, I just had my period last week, and I was like, I still, have emotional things and I'm still dealing with some pain, but I'm like, oh, woe is me. But now that I'm out of my period, I'm like, wait, actually, I'm a lot better than I was, and so
Right.
I think for those women that are discouraged, because I know I definitely was. And I can't remember what her name is, but she was just a few weeks ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And she seemed very discouraged when I would watch her on the
Mm-hmm.
videos. And I was like, that's how I feel. But then at the end, she wrote this thing and just talked about how great she felt. And it was just such an encouragement to me, because I was like, okay, I am where she was when I
Mm-hmm.
first started, or when she, when I'm saying, but,
Yeah.
and so to see her go through that, I kind of got to watch her go through the
Yeah.
process a little bit. And then to hear her say all these things about how just so many things are so much better, and just hear this happiness in her voice, that was an encouragement to me. That was like,
Right.
okay, I can do this, and I can look back at the things that are getting better and enjoy them and be glad. And I think
Right.
one thing too that was helpful for me, that might be an encouragement for other women, is to talk to other people about how you're improving, like that aren't a part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear them agree with you is like really encouraging. You're like, yeah, I
Right.
have noticed that, and
Yeah.
so like I kind of talked to my husband, like, this is getting better, and I talked to my sisters about it and stuff. And so that for me was a big deal, for them to say that they've
Totally.
noticed it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this really is happening. And so
Right.
yeah, so that was, I think, helped me through my discouraging times to get to where I am now, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point, because I definitely try to share very like realistically that healing your hormones is not linear, and it's not like we can't throw it in the microwave and then expect, a 5 hour roast beef. It doesn't work that way. It's, if we want grandma's roast beef, like we got to put the prep work in, right? So
Yeah.
but this is that part of it is undoing that mindset of how we've been treated in the medical system, that we take a pill and our symptoms go away, and really allowing our body to have that healing process. And you did that so well. And even, training yourself to look at those wins. And I remember asking my husband when I was at the very, beginning of my hormone healing journey, like I kind of was like taking my own temperature. Am I okay? Like, like, am I really all right? And he's like, yeah, you're not screaming at me all the time anymore, and I didn't really scream at him, but I definitely yelled a couple times. Um, and didn't really put the pieces together that it was like, oh, that's, basically I'm having PMDD, and my doctor just wouldn't, diagnose it. And so having that reflected back to you, because it's like we look at ourselves every day in the mirror, right? And so we don't notice, maybe, we're developing some lines over time, or our face has changed or whatever. It's the same with our hormones and our healing process. Like, we live in our bodies, so we don't always get to see those changes, and that's one of the reasons why we're so big on celebrating wins. So
Yeah.
Tanna, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I hope that those of you watching, that you are filled with hope. If you're curious if this process could be beneficial for you and where you're at with your hormones, then I would highly encourage you to just send me a private message or comment under this video, and we'll see if we can get you connected before the new year. But Tanna, thank you again. This was so encouraging. I love, and I still love, getting to watch your transformation, because you're not done yet. So I'm excited to see what the next couple weeks bring for you. And thank you for taking the time to really just deposit into the other women here some hope. So thank you again so much.
Yep.
Okay. You have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.